You are listening to the Maple Footy Podcast, the unofficial football podcast of the North. I'm your host, Sam Little. Find me on socials at SamLittle44 and the podcast at Maple Footy Pod. And now there's nothing left to say except for sit back, enjoy, and welcome to the show. Hello, yes, welcome back to the Maple Footy Podcast. And not to waste too much of your time ahead of this interview, it's one that I'm extremely excited about, and I quickly just wanted to say a big time thank you to Noah Jensen and Forge FC, of course, for putting the time aside for me to do this. I had a genuine blast getting to prep the interview, and then, of course, doing the interview itself. So I just quickly wanted to say thank you and how appreciative I truly am of it all. So, yes, thank you, and without further ado, here is the interview with Forge FC's Noah Jensen. I hope you enjoy. Hello, and welcome back to the Maple Footy Podcast. And sitting with me right now is someone who I've really enjoyed watching in Hamilton for these last few years. He won the Canadian Premier League regular season last year in 2024 and went back-to-back in the playoffs, winning the North Star Cup in 2022 and 2023. He's racked up 88 appearances for Forge so far, and it's an absolute pleasure to be sitting with him. His name is Noah Jensen. So Noah, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you for having me. It's nice to be on here.
Thank you. And getting started here, just kind of starting at the beginning of your journey. How does a kid growing up in Curtis, Ontario, become a pro soccer player?
Yeah, it definitely took a lot of driving from my parents, I'll tell you that. But yeah, growing up, Curtis is a very small town, I guess filled with a bunch of people who play hockey.
Yeah.
And growing up, that was something that I was never really interested in doing, I'll be honest. My sister and I both were big on soccer. I think that kind of helped me because, I always wanted to be better than her. Um, And that kind of kept me going in soccer. I knew I got to an age where my parents probably realized I wasn't gonna continue developing playing at a local club with people who, no offense to them, but they played hockey in the winter and soccer in the summer. And
Hmm.
kudos to my parents for taking me to an academy in Toronto when I was at age 10 and kind of exposed me to a different level of soccer. Um, but yeah, just my parents continually putting me in different situations, I think helped me a little bit with my comfortableness, getting like acclimated to new players and pushing myself to play at a higher level. Um, I know I was with the provincial team when I was 14 or 15 years old, and that was also a big one because at the time, I wasn't a very ma matured player. I hadn't grown yet into my body, and so there
Yeah.
was a lot of guys at that age who had, and they were ahead of me then. But I feel like, I kept my head down, kept working hard, and I eventually surpassed them and surpassed expectations I even had for myself to become a professional footballer.
That's awesome. And yeah, it's always mom and dad, I find, right? Always driving, always planning different opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, even back then, they didn't even have the 407 go all the way out to Curtis. So my shout out to my mom and dad for real for driving me all the way up and down the 401 into Toronto to get me to play some soccer.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And especially in a predominant, not only hockey country, but a hockey town. What kind of drew you more to soccer over hockey?
Honestly, I think it's because I was good at it.
Yeah.
I remember even when I played house league, my parents, obviously I don't really remember too much to it, but my parents would always say that I was just running around and having the time of my life.
Yeah.
And I was actually half good at it. I do starting playing rep soccer when I was 7, and it was like kind of all the best players who had been in the house league that I was in.
Mhm.
And so that was interesting to be, I guess, with the best players and then to thrive, I guess, at that level. And then to continue developing somewhere else, going to Toronto and kind
Mhm.
of I don't know, just introducing myself to a new environment. I think all those things just pushed me to grow a little bit more and to venture maybe outside of Curtis, which I
Yeah.
probably otherwise wouldn't have really had the opportunity to do.
Awesome. And kind of leaping into like when in your journey did you kind of think I could kind of make a crack at going pro here?
I knew when I was 11 or 12, I had been to like a identification camp in the US for the University of Akron. My dad was kind of introducing me to the fact that, Going overseas and going to Europe, it's not for everyone. There's a path to go to university in the US, get a scholarship, get
Hmm.
your education, and play football at a high level. And like going there, I didn't really know what to expect, but it was a good kind of introduction to me to understand that pathway. And I think introducing me to that pushed me to want to pursue playing college soccer.
Yeah.
And wasn't really a heavily recruited player. I only had one scholarship offer, and that was to go to Oakland University, which is where I attended.
Yeah.
And I think probably when I got there, the maybe first or second day, obviously I didn't really know what the level was going to be like, but once I had gotten to know the guys and gotten comfortable with the group and started just playing the way I play, those guys were 4 or 5 years older than me, and I was pushing myself to be at the top of that group. And I think that's really when I knew if I can do this and if I can excel at this level, then I have a chance to continue pushing myself to be a professional.
Awesome. And how did you kind of find the adaptation moving from Canada into down to Oakland? How was that?
It was different for sure. I mean, I feel like university is really the first time where you get to play with guys who are not only just 1 year older than you, but 3, 4 years older than you.
Hmm.
And so that in itself is a good experience. I remember when I was going to university, I weighed 135 pounds and I was only 5'7". So, like the freshman 15 really helped me grow into
Yeah.
my body. But I think also playing at that level where it's kind of more men's football, it teaches you things that otherwise you wouldn't have learned, I guess, in youth football. And I think that was a great opportunity itself. I think nowadays, some kids who go pro right away when they're 17, they don't really have that feeling of going into a new environment and having to prove yourself before getting to the professional level. So
Yeah.
that helped me get settled at Oakland and start playing my best football, and it definitely translated into coming to the professional level at Forge and thriving.
Yeah. And is it true that in 2019 you trained with the Forge team a couple of times to test out a professional setting?
Yeah, when I was so during the 2019 summer, would have been once or twice a week almost for the entire summer. I was
Mhm.
in here training. Obviously, it was the first year of the league. I went to the inaugural match that was here just because, I was excited to see Canadian football, and one of my Oakland teammates, Austin Ricci, played for York at the time, and so I got the chance to watch him, which was really cool. But yeah, it was a cool opportunity. Obviously, I'd known Coach Bobby through Sigma and some of the players through playing with them in the past. But I didn't really know what a professional environment looked like
Mhm.
until then. And I'll never forget this, but one of my last days here was David Edgar's first day. And
Oh,
the
wow.
only reason that I recognized him was because I used to play with his FIFA card in FIFA. And that's the only way that I knew his face. One of my friends at the time, Simon, he was in the locker room. I was like, dude, that's David Edgar.
Yeah,
He played in the Premier League. So I think that experience in itself was cool. Obviously, I got to play with a bunch of great players, and now it's kind of a cool full circle moment to share the locker room with them.
absolutely. That's really cool though, the way that you knew David Edgar. That's actually so funny. And then before you joined Forge, you got a call from Captain Kyle Becker. What was that like for him going out of his way to do that? And to my understanding, it wasn't to court you for Forge. It was in anticipation for the upcoming draft, right?
Yeah, so crazy story about the MLS draft is due to some complications that they had during the COVID season, they decided to do the draft before the season started.
Hmm.
And unfortunately for that is it's not similar to the NBA draft or the NFL draft where you yourself submit your name
Hmm.
gets submitted for you.
Hmm.
And so unfortunately I had my name submitted before I played my last 2 years, and in all fairness, like I hadn't had a truly standout season yet, so I wasn't really on the radar to be drafted. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, I didn't know that, the draft went on. I didn't get drafted. I wasn't expected to be drafted. And then I proceeded to play the two best seasons of my collegiate career, and then got to the end of the season, and I think 2, 3 days before the draft, my agent found out that I wasn't going to be eligible. Which, blessing and a curse because I didn't get drafted, but I ended up here in a great place. And so leading up into the draft, I was invited to go to the MLS Combine, and Bex is a guy who's been through that whole process. He went to the Combine. He was anticipated to be picked in the first round. He knew what it took to succeed in those moments, and I hadn't really, had really any serious conversations with Bex before then.
Mhm.
But he went out of his way to call me. It was the day that they played Montagua in the Champions League, and it must have been a stressful day for him because that was an important game. But he
Yeah.
took the time to give me a call and just asked me how things were going. He just talked a little bit about his experience. Told me just relax. That's the most exciting time of your life is to when your professional career is starting to unravel in front of you, and
Mhm.
that really was calming in a sense because at the time, obviously, I only had my parents and my agent to really talk to, and they had never been through it before. So just to have his opinion on that was huge, and then obviously, it was nice to have that relationship built with him when the time came that I was coming to Forge.
Yeah, D- it kind of feels like you were meant to be at Forge with training in 2019 and then getting a call from Kyle Becker
Yeah.
before your draft and everything. Um, what did that kind of tell you about the type of captain that Becker is and the type of club that Forge is that he would go out of his way on a big day for himself to kind of call you?
I mean, obviously, in retrospect, I can sit here and tell you like how appreciative I am of it.
Hmm.
Maybe at the time didn't really understand how big of a deal it was.
Hmm.
But I guess, after all that happened and I had all this disappointment with the draft, I didn't really have time to sit around and be upset about it because Forge was preparing to play their match against Cruz Azul, and that's when, I got invited to come here to preseason, not on the guarantee that I was going to sign, but just
Yeah.
because now I was available and the club wanted to see how I would fit in here. And it was intense, coming in kind of as a trialist and earning my spot here at the club. I think it was just a testament to me not getting caught up in the situation.
Hmm.
But at the same time, to go through all that, but then to come in here and meet, guys like Borges, Alex, and then Bex, who I had already spoken to, be very welcoming of me, but also demand a higher quality out of me. I think that's something maybe missed a little bit at school. I was constantly, the captain of my team, and I was demanding a lot from other people, and then now I was having a lot demanded of me, and that's something that really made me step my level up. I'm sorry. And yeah, it turned my game into something that would be more applicable to the professional level. And then, obviously everything went well there. I was able to sign and then make my debut against Cruz Azul, which that in itself is a moment I'll never forget.
Yes, absolutely. At the Azteca making your professional debut.
Yeah.
And I had that question a bit later, but I'll ask you that now since you brought it up. What was it like to literally make your professional debut at the Azteca, one of the most famous stadiums in the world?
Yeah. Well, it's crazy because so for the first leg that was at Tim Hortons Field,
Hmm.
Um, I was supposed to be registered for the game, but because it was either something to do with my contract or something hadn't gone through yet, and so I wasn't registered to be on the roster.
Yeah.
And so unfortunately I wasn't able to be on the bench that day. And then obviously we traveled down to Mexico City. I had never been before. And then we got to go to the Azteca and see the beauty in it the day before when we were training, which was unbelievable.
Hmm.
And I knew I was going to be a part of the squad, but obviously not having played in the first leg, I didn't really know how that was going to go. And then I think it must have been 60 minutes in, one of our center backs who was here last year, Garvin, he went down holding his calf.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, oh, maybe they'll just put a center back on. And then, Bobby said, no, put your shin pads on. You're going in the game. And I remember standing there at the halfway line waiting for the fourth official to let me on. It just felt like I was at a concert because,
Yeah.
everyone in the stands was whistling. Everyone had like their cell phone lights out. The lights were very bright coming from around the stadium. And that experience in itself was really cool. But also, like, it amped me up like crazy. Right when I got on the field, I was just running around as fast as I could. So.
Yeah.
What a incredible experience. I know for my parents were able to watch on TV, which was
That's awesome.
also very, very cool for them to be able to enjoy that moment with me. And I still have my jersey from that game. I have it hung up in my bedroom. So
Yeah.
it was all very special just to be in such a historic place, but then also to feel what it was like to play my first minutes as a professional was incredible.
That's awesome. I'm honestly not sure it gets better than that, making your debut at the Azteca. That's
No.
amazing.
And it kind of all fell into place, like I said, because I was gonna play in the first leg, and then last minute I couldn't,
Yeah.
and it just set me up to make my debut at the Azteca, which is a great storyline in itself.
That's pretty awesome. And yeah, that's definitely a jersey that I don't think you'd ever want to get
No.
rid of.
Yeah, that one's staying in my collection for sure.
100%. And kind of quickly back to college a little bit. What was it like balancing getting your master's in business and playing professionally at the same time?
Yeah, so I love talking about it, but I did my undergraduate in actuarial science, which I love saying to the guys in the locker room because they have no clue what it is. Um, and that in itself was interesting at times,
Mhm.
balancing the athletic and academic side of college sports, but that's the underrated side of it. I think it helps you mature a lot as a person.
Mhm.
And due to COVID, I had an extra year of eligibility and I was able to start my master's.
Yeah.
Um, which was great, because obviously I was receiving scholarships, so it was free school, if you would. And then I'd only done a semester of that before I came and started playing here, and it was a decision that I made to kind of continue on with my education. Education had always been something that was very valuable to me, and even though I went through it at a little bit of a slower pace at the professional level,
Mhm.
it was very nice to have Oakland University set up in a way that I could continue it online and not really have any hiccups of having to go back there to write exams or anything. Everything was online. And yeah, I finished in December of last year, so officially graduated, got a fancy little piece of paper to put in a good frame, stick on my wall, and
Awesome.
yeah, it was a great experience. I love doing stuff like that, and honestly, it's better in my free time. It gave me a little bit more purpose, which now I'm kind of lost.
So not only a great player, but a very smart guy too, is what I'm hearing.
I try.
Uh, what is something that now you do in place of that? Like you were so busy with that, now you just get to chill a little bit. What do you do with your free time then?
I know it was so easy. Some days I would come home from training and just know exactly what homework I had to do or quizzes
Mhm.
that I had to do. And now I just get home and I'm like, what am I going to do with my life? But I've started to read a lot more, do stuff a little bit more on my own time.
Mhm.
I've put more time investment into, other things that make me happy, like cooking and spending time with my family. So. That in itself has been good. Now I have little bit more time to do those things, which I think is good. But at the same time, I know that it's important to kind of have hobbies away from football because it's easy to get wrapped up in it sometimes and to have it on your mind 24 hours of the day. So it's nice to have that reset button, get away from the stadium, and be able
Mhm.
to indulge in something else to take my mind off of it.
Awesome. And back into the game and everything. Who's a player that you modeled your game after?
That's a good question. When I was younger, my favorite team was Barcelona, and
Okay.
this was when Ronaldinho played there. And my dad, he used to do this funny thing. He would Photoshop like my face onto Ronaldinho's head. He said, "This is who you're supposed to be one day." Which I thought was funny because I was like, "Dad, I can't grow hair like that. Like I don't think I'm capable of it." Unfortunately for him, I don't think I turned out to be a Ronaldinho style player, but
Yeah.
watching that Barcelona team a lot. I got to watch Iniesta and Xavi when they were kind of maturing, I guess, into going into their prime. And what I always valued and respected was the way that they were able to take care of the ball and
Mhm.
their technique and just technical ability in general to maintain possession, which I guess growing up, that was one of the main things that I watched. So definitely those two players for sure. And then recently well, not recently, but I've been a City supporter for a while.
Okay.
So the reason that happened is when I was at the age of 10 or 11, I think Samir Nasri was playing for Arsenal and then he transferred to City and he was a player that I loved watching.
Yeah.
He was an exciting number 10 player and he was the reason that I became a City supporter, so I'll also have to say him.
That's pretty sick. Sammy Nasri's not a name that you usually hear all that often, so
I know. I think there's gonna be some crazy throwback ball knowledge, but he scored a brace, I think, against Fulham. I
Mhm.
want to say in like the 2009 season, and that was the game where I was like, yes, Samir Nasri's the guy I want to be.
That's awesome.
Obviously now he's a little bit overweight. I don't know if I want to be exactly like him, but at the time he was an unbelievable player.
Yeah, it may not be as mobile on the pitch.
Yeah, exactly.
So obviously being a midfielder, you have a great vision for the ball. Case in point, your beautiful crossfield pass to Jevramovic in the season opener. Is that something that kind of always came naturally to you? Just some great vision on the ball?
I think, definitely when I would want to say like 12 or 13, there was a coach that I had. He was a Scottish guy named Andy, and he, obviously being Scottish, loved when guys would fizz passes in and to be able to spray long passes. And I think that was probably the age where I first figured out I had some sort of affinity towards being able to weight passes and to be able to play passes over a longer distance better than other players. But then another crazy story is that when I was 13 or 14, I went over to England and I was training with Aston Villa for a few weeks.
Oh wow.
And one of their feedbacks after that was that we think, if you want to be a successful midfielder, you have to have a better range of passing.
Hmm.
And so I think that was something at the time where I realized, I maybe needed to be a little bit more consistent in it. And so
Hmm.
I took a lot of time and effort during training, outside of training to get better at that. And I know that, that hard work then has definitely paid off now. And I would say that's one of the focal points of my game is being able to stretch the field and being able to look up and put the ball wherever I want it. So definitely at the time, obviously it would have been tough feedback to hear, but it definitely helped mold and form the mentality I had towards getting better at it.
Yeah, and it's that feedback that's really, I think, helped obviously because watching you play, I just love seeing some of the passes that you can spray like all around the field. To me that's like how a center midfielder should be playing. So
Thank you.
and more about your game as well. Something I noticed is that you seem to only ever manage to score like proper bangers. Is that just like does is that just something that you just happens naturally or like what's up with that?
It's definitely not the way that I draw it up. But I do know that I'm a confident enough player where if the ball's sitting upright or I'm in a good area of the field, regardless of if I'm at the top of the box or I'm 30 yards out, I'm not really afraid of making a decision to shoot.
Hmm.
And I think sometimes that's what throws goalies off. I know uh I think one of the goals I scored against Pacific last year, one of the comments that Jassim made to me, he said like you took the volley so quickly that the goalie didn't even have time to get set.
Yeah.
And so I think being able to have that in my back pocket, goalies are not always going to be expecting that stuff. And if you can hit it properly and hit it well, it flies in the back of the net and you look like an amazing player. But it's just something that, I've been able to grow and develop at. I know my teammates would know that I do score good goals sometimes in training as well. It's not just lucky
Yeah.
bounces in games. But yeah, I would say that's just definitely one of the strong points of my game too is being able to consistently be striking the ball well from outside the box, and obviously sometimes it turns into to some good goals.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And speaking of some bangers that you scored, there was a game last year where you scored two in one game. But something else that was really special about that game was you captained Forge. What did
yeah.
that mean to you to be able to captain Forge for the first time?
I mean, it was incredible. In itself, my parents were there, which was also a
That's
nice
awesome.
special moment. But at the beginning of the season, I've been named one of the captains. It was me, Kyle, and Alex. And I
Hmm.
know there had been a couple of times that I had played and Bex wasn't playing and Alex was the captain. And so I wasn't really expecting, to be named the captain, but I believe the coaches, I don't know if it was the coaches, but on the team sheet that was submitted for the day, they had Alex as the captain. But when I walked into the locker room, I saw the captain's armband in my locker. And first of all, I was like, that's a big deal. And second of all, I was like, what am I going to say to these guys before we walk out onto the field? Um, it's funny I remember being a captain in university. You kind of get out onto the field to get into a huddle, and you're like, wow, I got to say something to everyone now. So I think I did a good job at that. Obviously, that armband gave me some superpowers that game, but
Yeah.
yeah, like I said, just a huge honor to captain this club. But at the same time, I think it's a testament to the player I've been, not only for this club and for the fans, but also for my teammates. There's been a lot of times where, I've gone through some disappointing moments or moments that I felt I could have done better. But
Mhm.
I know that if that happens on a Saturday, I'll show up on Monday and I'll give my best. And that's all I can keep doing. And I'm glad that that was recognized by my teammates and the coaching staff.
Amazing. And yeah, you've been referred to as a leader in and amongst the Forge fandom, I guess, for a little bit now. Being one of the leaders of Forge, how do you go about that, especially when it comes to like being helping out the younger guys? How seriously do you take that role?
Um, I read it. I read it was either a quote or an interview from a football coach one time, and he's like, anyone can be a leader by example, but like the true leaders are ones who can grab guys and like get them to do stuff.
Hmm.
And I think that I early on I was big on being a leader by my example. But I think especially this year I've been able to step into the role where maybe that's not enough, and that there are a lot of guys here that it's their first time being a professional. It's their first time being at a club that aspires to win trophies every single season.
Yeah.
And so whether that's helping them, giving them an example every day of what to do before training, after training, in your free time, what you're eating, what you're not eating, I think I've learned all that stuff from other guys, and so it's
Hmm.
important for me to kind of pass on that message to the younger guys in the locker room. But at the same time, I know it's a huge honor because of how much respect I had for all the mentors I've had throughout my career. Like I had mentioned before, when I was in university, I had a guy who used to play in the CPL, Austin Ricci. He
Hmm.
was he was big on getting me to, do extra stuff and to push myself to be the best player that I could be, and I respected him a lot for it. And then obviously coming into Forge, there's a plethora of guys that you could take an example from, but I'm happy that I've developed into someone that when new players come in or when young players come in, they can look up to not only those guys who helped me, but also myself, because I learned it as well, and they can learn a lot from me.
Amazing. And you've been here now for this is your fourth season,
Yeah.
and it is hard to imagine Forge FC without Noah Jensen. I think you've left your mark incredibly so far. And I just wanted to kind of switch it up just a little bit here, away from the game a bit. Having now been in Hamilton for a few years, what's your favorite thing about the city?
So last year I lived in the North End by Bayfront Park,
Hmm.
and I think some of my favorite days was just in the afternoon after I had finished eating dinner, just to go walk through the park.
Yeah,
Whether that be at Pier 8 where like the Williams Cafe is, or
a
just
beautiful
around
spot.
the marina.
Yeah.
I used to love it, going there, watching the sunset. That I love doing that, and then obviously I was on the North End, so I was only a walk away from James Street. I got the chance to eat almost food from every restaurant on James Street, which was the best because now I'm just full of restaurant
That's
recommendations.
awesome.
I think the biggest thing though is when I first came to Hamilton, I wasn't keen enough on trying a lot of new things. I was kind of
Hmm.
just, content with going to the stadium, knowing what was around the stadium, and then going home. But last year, I started to venture out. I went to see the many waterfalls that Hamilton has, which
Yeah.
was those are also very cool. And I think now I have a very good grasp of the city, and I know that there's so many things here that I enjoy doing. And so for a lot of people who aren't from Hamilton, they wouldn't know how interesting and beautiful some of these things are. But I know their true value, and they're very
Yes.
important to me, which I love.
Yes, no, say that louder a little bit. Hamilton's always getting some disrespect. Say
I
that
know it's such a
louder.
bad rep. I'm like, have you guys
Exactly.
ever like ventured around the city before?
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Like you said, Bayfront, all the waterfalls. It's
Yeah, I'm
awesome.
telling you, like, because you can even walk from Bayfront across the way to where the what is it, the botanical gardens are.
Yeah,
You can do all that in a 15-minute walk, but it's like everyone's just talking about, oh, Hamilton's gross, Hamilton's this, Hamilton's that. And
exactly. That
it's not.
see, that's what I'm saying. I'm
Uh,
always saying it.
yeah, I'm very proud to be a Hamilton supporter, but also tell people that, hey, Hamilton's actually a nice place.
Yeah, it's a great place. You
Yeah,
mentioned all the food. It's such a diverse culture. It's
exactly.
awesome. I'm glad that you have recognized that and are backing that statement up.
Yeah.
Another little fun one. What's a pre-match hype song that you like to go to every now and then?
This is gonna sound odd, but before games, I love listening to like Spanish music. Um, but it's literally because I don't know what they're saying, but it's just like the beats and the melodies and I don't have to focus on the lyrics at all. I just get into the zone and focus on my own thoughts, which is funny because I couldn't tell you the what is being said in these songs, but
Mhm.
that's what gets me locked in is the Spanish music.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Uh, maybe it goes back to your love of Barcelona, maybe
Yeah, maybe from a young age, I was just in the Spanish culture.
Spanish mindset.
Yeah.
Um, what's a game that you always circle on the calendar at the start of the season once the schedule drops?
Uh, I think. regardless of if we're playing Calvary or not, I think the home opener.
Hmm.
Because it's like the first opportunity for our fans to see us, for them to see the new players and to kind of see the new style that we're gonna have for the season. So
Yeah.
I really enjoy those matches. This one was no different, the one that we had this past weekend, but I think also too the games that I enjoy circling are the tough away trips. I know in the past we've had, difficulty going to Winnipeg and getting wins, or
Hmm.
even this game upcoming on this weekend against Pacific. I think these are all long travel days where everyone is having to deal with like their legs being heavy with the jet lag, stuff like that. But when your team can come together after that and still, grind out a result or play well in those games, I think that's what makes it a little extra special.
Yeah.
So even though it sucks when you're on the plane and you're going through that 5 hour flight and then you're 3 hours behind, that may suck, but then getting something out of that game and having a joyful ride back with your teammates, it makes it all worth it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And kind of speak, I guess, since you brought up away stuff, we'll take Hamilton out of it. What's your favorite stadium that you've played in? Maybe we'll also say not the Azteca as well.
Yeah. Well, any of those stadiums that we played at in Mexico were unbelievable. The
Yeah.
one for Chivas was, I think, it was newly built. It was incredible. And then obviously this past one in Monterrey, the facilities there are unmatched.
Hmm.
But I love playing in Halifax. Their fans are definitely something special, and
Hmm.
I would love to see that emulated across the league. I think Forge and Halifax do an excellent job at
Yes.
engaging their fans and getting as many out to every single game if they can. So
Yeah.
definitely Halifax grounds, and then them and Calvary just because they're both grass and playing on grass is a huge game changer for us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And going back into your first season now, you made your debut, of course, at the Azteca, and then you, a few months later, win the CPL final.
hmm
What did that mean to you to win your first CPL final?
It was kind of a whirlwind. I know that in the semifinals when we beat Calvary in the first leg, I was on the bench and I didn't play.
Hmm.
And then in the second leg, we won at home and I wasn't in the team. I wasn't even rostered. Um, and then, Kyle had gotten a red card in that game.
Hmm.
And that's when I kind of had like there really is going to be a chance for me to play in the finals here. And I think that's kind of the mindset I had going through my first year. I knew that, there's going to be a game that I'm not going to play or a game that I'm going to only play a little bit, but that doesn't mean the next weekend the situation's not going to change and I'm going to be relied upon for in a big moment. I know that my teammates and my coaches all believed in me, which was huge. Everyone had my back, and I think I performed really well in that final. I
Yes.
think our team played fantastic. In my opinion, that's one of our most convincing, like finals performances or in a game that really mattered the most. We
Hmm.
played out of our shoes, and to have that moment, not only with the guys on the field, but then to celebrate after with Kyle and all the other guys who hadn't been in the team was special because that's where I was the week before,
Yeah.
and I knew how much it meant to me to have the confidence from my coaches to step into that game and play well. So it was very special. And again, my parents were able to get out to Ottawa and watch that
Awesome.
game. So that was really cool.
That's awesome. And then into the next final that you ended up winning, back to back and doing it
Yeah.
at home. Was that a bit different that time, doing it at home, especially the circumstances of that game going 1-0
Yeah.
down extra time and then two beautiful goals in
Mhm.
extra time to get you guys to win? What did it mean to do it at home?
Well, I think the biggest thing going into the game was that no one had done it at home yet. And
Yes.
we had that opportunity to be the first team to do it. And I remember, being at the hotel the day of the game and obviously we're doing our debrief before the game. The coach looks up the lineup and everyone, that's starting or in the team, you can feel the jitters and the excitement.
Hmm.
And I think that's the special part about sports is you want to be in moments where you feel that anticipation and that excitement to play in those big games. So that in itself was great, and like you said, the circumstances of that game were unlike no other I've ever played in before. We played 90 minutes. That was just a straight chess match. Nobody was giving anything, and then you get an extra time, and it just all explodes.
Yeah.
Um, but I think especially in those moments, that's when your quality shines through. And obviously, we have fantastic players on our team, and we
Yeah.
scored two unbelievable goals, which again, huge shout out to Borges and Benny to pull those off. But I think that also just added to the insane hype of winning the championship trophy at home.
That was awesome. I was at that game.
It
It was
was
an amazing game. One of my favorite games I've been to. It was so sick.
Yeah, it left me speechless. I was on the bench with Ali when we scored the second goal that Borja scored from the corner, and
Yeah.
we could not believe that.
No, that was insane because I was with my buddy and I was like, there's no way that just happened. Like in a final as well. Like it was
Yeah,
absurd.
yeah, it's crazy.
And then since we're talking about big games, how do you go about prepping for a big game like the Canadian Championships or when you're facing an MLS side or someone from Liga MX? What's the difference between kind of that prepping for one of those big games as opposed to maybe a league game?
Um, Definitely in those games, you're looking at their whole roster and you're looking at all the places that all those guys have played before.
Hmm.
I know, especially with Monterrey, like they had a guy like Ocampos who had played at a very high level in Europe, and Canales who had played at Real Madrid.
Hmm.
And then obviously they had just signed Ramos, which just an incredible club that they have, and insane amount of money that they have to sign these players, and to be in a competition where we get to compete against that, I think is really special. But I think as you mentioned, the preparation is a lot different for those games. You know that at certain times in the game where maybe times in the CPL, some players are not really able to find solutions, that they have all those guys that are able to do that and to turn the game on its head. So those are things you definitely have to be aware of, and at the same time, they have world-class coaches that are making them aware of everything that we have to offer. So you know that you're going to get their best game, and that they're capable of doing pretty much anything to make their team win.
Last question, Sam.
For sure. And Brooke, I end this off with every interview. What's something that you want the Forge faithful to kind of know about you?
I think the one thing that I'll say, since I've been here and kind of growing myself as a member of the Hamilton community, is I think it's important that, all the supporters and all the people that come out to watch our games, or, all the community appearances I do, or all the podcasts I go on, it's important for me to say like how valuable that stuff is to us as players.
Mhm.
Because like we go to places like Vancouver and Valor, and they have 1,000 people in the stands, and like it feels like you're just playing another game. But every game at or Hamilton Stadium now, it's special.
Mhm.
To be able to interact with the community when I go out and do certain appearances is special, and to be that role model, I guess, as a professional playing in Canada that I didn't have when I was growing up. I think that's the most influential part to me, and I hope that that's something that I continue growing in and can be to the youth and the people of Hamilton.
Awesome. Well, Noah, thank you so much for putting the time aside for me today. And I really do appreciate you sitting down and talking with me. So, all the best this weekend, of course, against Pacific, and then with the entire season upcoming. So, thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you. That was a lot of fun.
Thank you. So, yes, that does wrap up this edition of the Maple Footy Podcast. Once again, a thank you to Noah and Forge for letting me do that. I really did enjoy it, and I hope you did too. I've really enjoyed getting to do these. So, yes, just a big time thank you to everyone who made it happen. And just before I go, I said off mics to Noah that I had a list of players that I did want to interview once I kind of started these interviews and everything. And he was on that list. So, it was genuinely just such a pleasure to get to kind of do that, and being from Hamilton and Noah having contributed so much to the club so far, it was genuinely just a very proud moment for me and the podcast as a whole. So yes, thank you to everyone, and thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed. Stick around, of course, more podcasts will be dropping in the very near future. So until then, cheers everyone. And that was your Maple Footy Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Check my socials for any and all future updates. Remember to support Canadian football, be kind, and until next time, live, laugh, little.